So at this time, I'm going to spotlight Suzanne Carter, who will be moderating our, oh, there she is, will be moderating our alumni panel. Turn it over to Suzanne.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day, out of a busy day. Of course, we're all in this uncertain environment, but one thing we know for sure, it is very important for us to continue our education. And I'm really just very pleased to be a part of a program that considers continuous improvement and continued education to be fundamental to making agile strategic leaders. And we're in a situation now where we all recognize that agility is of the utmost importance. And I'm really very, very happy that we have some panelists that are alumni from our program who have agreed to join us to talk with prospective students about what they got out of their program and some of the things that that probably as prospective students you all are wondering about. So just briefly a little bit about me. I've been at TCU for 11 years now. I actually teach strategy in the program as well as I do our global environment of business class. I get to see students at the very beginning of the program and also at the very end of the program. And so in the span of those 11 years, I've actually gotten to teach all of the panelists that are with us today, and I'm very excited to have you all with us. And it's really, really fascinating for me to see from day one where a student is to by the end of the program, how they've progressed as a leader. So I'm really happy to have these three alumni who've taken time from their busy schedule to be here. And during the next 30 minutes, our panelists are going to address questions that probably all of you had at one stage of the game. The questions we're going to address over the next 30 minutes are why pursue an MBA and why particularly the EMBA program at TCU. What knowledge, skills, and abilities do you actually develop in the program? And then one that always is of interest to prospective students is how have other students managed to balance the work, life, and school commitments that's involved. We're also going to talk about how students have built and expanded their own networks professionally and personally through our program. And we'll talk, also I'll ask the panelists how they have examples of how they built and received their own return on investment for the program, because as you all know, it's not free. It's a time commitment, it's a financial commitment, and I think this is a very important part. So what I would like to let the participants know is that we'll take questions from the audience, and if you have questions for the panel, just submit them as you did before with Rita's work. Thank you, Rita, for your fine information on negotiations. So submit them to Kevin Davis using that chat feature, and then we'll answer those questions at the end of this panel discussions. If you're having any problems hearing or anything, then raise your hand in the raise your hand feature, and we'll have our Cecily will connect with you and help you with that. So now I'd like to introduce our alumni panelists. Our first panelist is Suzanne West. Suzanne West was from the class of 2013. It's great to see you, Suzanne. She's Vice President of Finance at Spirit Aerosystems. So thank you for joining us. The second panelist that we have is Kim Spears. Kim? Hi, Kim. Kim is from the class of 2014. And she's Director of Communications and Engagement at PCCA. Thank you, Kim. And finally, we have Bob Weirdsma. Hi, Bob. Bob is actually from the class of 2020. So he literally just finished his class work just a couple of weeks ago, and he'll be graduating in the summer of this year. He's managed services leader of the Fulcrum Group. So thank you to the three of you. So let me get started. The first thing I'd like to do is give everybody on the panel a few minutes to share their professional background, the reasons that they chose to pursue an MBA, and the expectations that you had for EMBA program experience. I mean, what transformed you as a leader and as a business professional during your program? So I am going to start with our person who has been an alum for the longest. So Suzanne West, I'll ask you to start.
Myself. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's so nice to see all the professors and all those that are the MBA faculty. So I think what got me involved, I had an opportunity several years before. I was class of 13, but I had an opportunity to do the EMBA actually at TCU many years before that, and it just wasn't the right it wasn't the right timing for me. And we'll talk about work-life balance later. But for me, it was always something that was missing in my life and missing with my peers, and it was always something that I wanted to do. So Suzanne talked a little bit about the beginning of the class and the end of the class, how much we grew as a team, how much we grew with trust, and then really for me personally, I think it was just self-confidence. I think we all have a lot of self-confidence, but until you get in there, you're very nervous. You see all these other peers with these big titles, and that's one thing that titles just kind of go out the door at the EMBA program, and we're all students, and we're all students that are learning. So it was just such a great opportunity for me personally. And the growth, I was very much a tactical leader, and I'm very much more a strategic leader, and I learned a lot of those capabilities in the program.
Thank you, Suzanne. Let's move on to Kim.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to see everyone. As Suzanne mentioned, I'm Director of Communications now for a company that provides chemicals education support for compounding pharmacies. But I've been with that company now for about 2.5, almost 3 years. And prior to that, I worked for ad agencies for about 20 years in my career. And so I actually helped with the marketing of the MBA program. So Kevin and I joked that I was one of the longest recruits to join the program. So I was very well aware of everything that the MBA program offered. What I didn't really realize at the time is, as I started to explore it, is that having worked in the same industry and really working its way up, I had really lost my passion and lost my inspiration. And I was looking for what was that next thing that could really take me forward. At the same time, my role in the agency was changing more towards management and towards running the agency. So I was looking more for, again, that business background. I was a journalism major undergraduate at TCU. So that was really kind of the driver as we looked at it. So I had pondered it for numerous times, and had kind of similar to Suzanne, had looked at it at an earlier time. I think what really kind of got me got me moving on it was really, I had a team member who we were doing one of his annual reviews, and told me at the time, he's like, well, I think I'm going to go pursue my MBA at this time. And as those who know me, I'm a little competitive. So I had to, that was kind of the kick that I needed, because there was no way I was going to let him, my teammate, finish his MBA before I had even started mine. So that was really the impetus I needed. But I think echoing again what Suzanne said on transformation, the self-confidence was a big thing that I focused on with personal coaching. And then Rita's class, as you guys can imagine from hearing her present today, was just monumental in really looking at conflict management and a lot of things that I've dealt with. So I think as you look at transformation, it continues to grow and continues to evolve. So thank you, guys.
Bob?
Hi, Dr. Carter. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to you. As just starting off with my background, I've been in IT outsourcing for about 3 decades, so a while, in corporate America. And the reason I joined was I wanted the VP, I wanted the SVP. All of them, most of them have an MBA. So I entered the program, I will say pretty selfishly. I think as I went through the program, and I think Suzanne mentioned titles go out the window pretty quickly, and you're all there to accomplish a goal. And as you go through entrepreneurship and marketing negotiations, which I think everyone walked in loving each other, maybe walked out not liking each other as much for a minute. Negotiations was a brilliant class. I chose to make a switch in careers last fall, and I went to a small company, less than 30 people working for the founder. What the program really did was equipped me to have the tools to work with accounting, to work with the sales team, and to work with our supply chain more effectively to really improve our outcomes for our customers. So as we went into this pandemic situation, we were able to plan much more strategically back in early February to get our customers working remotely. And some of the tools that are brought to the table allow you to think strategically, see all the different threats that your companies have, and really support your customers in the best way. So it really brought a lot together that I was able to implement immediately.
All right, thank you all for that. So now we're going to move on to a question of your time, because your time is the most important thing. Each of the alumni have been able to kind of figure out how to manage that time. And I've found many are very adept at being able to balance family, work, school, etc. So I would love it if my panelists would provide the opportunity to let other prospective students know how you have accomplished that. This time, I am actually going to start first with you, Bob, because you're the one who was just in that for 18 months. So we'll start with Bob, and then we'll move on to Kim, and then on to Suzanne. So Bob.
So I think the first thing, my kiddos were all off in college doing different things, and I wasn't ready to join the golf flights or whatever else were going on. So I thought, get your head back into the educational process and learn. So the first thing I really had to do was sit down with my wife, my then VP, and let them know I'm doing this and I need your support. And that's the first thing. Just get buy-in from your management team, your spouse, your significant other. And what I did in summer before class was I blocked off probably between 7:30 till about 10 o'clock and really brushed up on a lot of the basics from my previous university studies, and just got into a cadence of studying, setting time, managing that time, and being consistent with it. And it really worked for me.
Great. All right, Kim?
Sure. Well, those of you who know me, I am a single mom, and when I started the program, my kids were age 10 and 12, and so I had no family that live in Fort Worth. So it was an interesting challenge that I had to think about going into it. And so my best advice would be, again, if you're juggling those things, is getting a support system. I think getting buy-in from the very beginning, set those expectations of what they would be. So for me personally, that meant I hired a nanny, so to speak, to help after school, to help get the kids where they needed to be. Again, having that conversation with your work teammates, your boss, and your employees that report up to you, really understanding what it is. I would say get good at delegation. That was a really important thing for me to learn to lean into others, ask for help. And you'll make a way to make it happen. So if this is your passion, this is something what you want to do, you're going to make a way to really have that happen. The thing also, like with the kids, again, I know some of them have younger kids. For me, the way that I was able to really manage it is I am an early bird. So I would get up about 3 a.m. to start studying, doing my reading. So I would work probably like 3 to 6. That was kind of my time. And then when I got home after work, I'd have that to focus on the kids, get them to bed, and get them all taken care of. And then I would go to bed early so I could get up at 3 and be fresh when I tackled it. I still do that. As some know, I would tend to cross emails. Some of our classmates like to stay up late, so we would start crossing emails about 2 or 3 sometimes as we were working on different things. So, but really the thing is you've got to find what works for you, and you'll make it happen. But make sure that you just get help, and it's a great time to really practice your delegation and build that support team around you. And remember, it's temporary. I mean, this is, again, it's going to go by so quickly that it seems like a lot to tackle right now, but it will fly by. And for those of you who have kids, it's a great lesson to teach your kids too on how to manage their time. And they can't really complain to you afterwards and saying, oh, I can't get grades, because you can have this leverage of, oh, I had to study and work and take care of you. So lots of great tools for your negotiation with the kids.
That's great. Suzanne, anything to add?
Well, I think just to echo kind of what both Bob and Kim said is, for me, I found it's all about finding your cadence. And right now, before you start the program, you're thinking, how could I possibly fit 1 more minute of time into my schedule? And it's really about prioritizing your schedule. For me, I just got the clutter out. I took TV. I mean, I really didn't think I had watched that much TV, but I'm kind of a news junkie. But I took all TV out, and then just kind of got back into the cadence. Like Kim and I would have studied well together if we had been in class together. I was always up super early in the morning too, at 3 or 4 in the morning. And that worked for me. My kids were in high school at the time. And so when I was going through finals, they were going through finals. So it worked. But I think as they both mentioned, it's getting that support system. And I definitely have that. And you have to have that to be successful.
That's great. So let's move on to talking about your network, because of course, one of the very important things about our program that's very high touch is that you develop professional and personal networks that you take with you throughout your life. So I would like each of our panelists to share with the audience about how the learning environment itself helped you to accelerate your growth as a leader and develop those lifelong connections. This time I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and I will start first with Kim, and then I'll move on to Bob and Suzanne. So Kim?
Hey, thanks, Suzanne. Well, prior to going into all this COVID, when I made the transition to the job I'm in now, I actually work remotely from Fort Worth, and our company's based in Houston. So I am thankful that I got accustomed to working from all the home. But I think what this has reinforced to me is all of these meetings when your entire day is spent online is just the power and impact of being in person and learning from your classmates. So this is a great situation. I'm so glad we're able to do it. But I think, as you guys, I know, are considering different options, particularly there's online options for MBA and all that. I can't stress for me personally what a difference it made to be in class with everyone. Some of the biggest learning that you have come from your classmates and really where their experiences and what they've learned. I was working for a small agency. We had less than 40 people when I was going through the program. So we didn't have a lot of resources as far as for coaches or for other exposure. So the chance that we were paired with a professional coach, again, through the program, and then also just looking at the wide expertise, the wide range of industries that my classmates were in, that was huge. That network has also just, for me, become such a huge support of friendship. My classmates, the alums in the program, it's like coming home every time we have a preview luncheon or have an EMB event, because these are the people we spend time with. So there's the network connections. I think when you start to see too, the way that people have advanced in their career through the connections we've had, or even opening businesses and started, it's incredible just to see how far all of those go.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Bob, what has been your experience?
I came into the program a little bit apprehensive about forming close relationships with people just out of the blue, especially 30 of them sitting in the cohort at the time. And it turned out to be the biggest pleasant surprise that I've had. I think I have 5 or 6 what I'll consider lifelong friends, and the rest of them family. I mean, the first 6 obviously family, but I saw Jason on earlier too. It's great to see you. But you do develop a camaraderie as your small groups form, as you have deadlines, and you are stretching yourself to learn, and you're also stretching yourself to understand from your leadership development what you're trying to improve on, and you have people there holding you accountable. And it's probably the most valuable component of what I've taken from the program is going through all of the things we went through and coming out with a family that I can pick up the phone and talk to anyone about anything, and we'll pick up right where we left off.
Okay. That's great, Bob. Thank you. Suzanne?
So I think it really is the same to those lifelong commitments. For me, we had a class of 24, and there's not anybody in that class that I wouldn't do anything for, and I could call them up today, and I haven't talked with them in years, could be able to, they would be right there for me. So I think it's that lifelong commitment with the peers. I think also in our groups, you learn more towards the end in the last semester, but at the beginning, it's sharing the delegation of work. I mean, there's a lot of reading to do, but you don't have to all do it. I mean, you can share your notes, and with your teams, you build a trust. And I think Rita touched on it a little bit too, but the feedback component is huge, and it's required, and we learn to do it, and it's that your team will give you brutal feedback. So, but it's honest and it's open, and I think that's allowed us all to grow a lot more as leaders as well.
Great. Thank you very much. One final question, and I'm sure this is of interest to everyone. We would not have the program that we have if we were not invested in making sure that you get your investment back. So return on investment for us as a program at TCU is very, very important. And people define return on investment differently. They have different expectations for what they're trying to get out of the program. And we are very personalized in our approach to saying, what's the best way to get you your ROI? And we even say, class on Friday, ROI on Monday. So it's our expectation that you get that return on investment. So I'd like to again turn to my panelists and ask you whether or not you have specific examples of getting that ROI, and what has meant the most to you. And I'm going to start with our most recent graduate and move back to Suzanne. So we'll start with Bob, go to Kim, and then Suzanne. Bob?
So I'll say financially, there's an ROI in how I started investing differently last year after we went through finance. And I can back up from there, even when I first started the program, in terms of discipline, time management, taking half-an-hour increments of time and creating that in your entire life so you're more efficient. I think there's a big ROI there in terms of how well you do your work and how well you articulate the time management component. Moving to the small company recently, the return has been bringing analytics tools to the company, taking the information we had about the operation with our finances and being able to bring it together to build pro formas to show here are trajectories if we consider these different threats and if we start to really look at how do we combat those. And it's a very different discussion than I could have had a year and a half ago with everything that the program brings together.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. Kim?
Sure. I think mine really came on a number of different fronts. I think probably the most immediate ROI was the job change. I had worked at the agency I was with for 12 years. After finishing the program, I really fell in love with organizational change management and really being part of a larger organization. So not only did the opportunity present itself, but I think really having that confidence in my skills and willing to step outside of my comfort zone to take a job where I was working remotely, and again, really kind of going in a different area than I had been in before. So that was a huge one. And accompanying that, of course, salary increase and other benefits that came with it. I think personally, you know, from my look at it, the connections just continue to pay off, and they far exceed, you know, the day after graduation. Even the connections that you're making, not just with your teammates, but with professors. I have called on Suzanne a number of times, asked her, said, could I borrow those slides for a presentation I'm doing at work? I've called, actually had Rita come speak at one of our educational events we have for our customers. So they continue to pay dividends from that aspect. And then, I think, so personally, the ROI for me has really been priceless with the connections and the learning and all the friends I made.
Great. And Suzanne?
I think for me, really, it was, you know, I know we just heard from Rita on the negotiations, but it really did, that impacted me the most. I negotiate a lot for, I'm in aerospace, specifically with defense, and my negotiation or my tactic had always been, it was win. I had to win, and it was, you know, very adversarial at times, or a lot of the times, and it was just all about getting every last cent for me. So, and going forward, and really what I learned was in my negotiations post the course was, it really is trying to get that win-win. And my negotiation tactic now is really learning about kind of what she had talked about, their interests and their needs. I mean, what really do they want? What's most important to them? And then what's most important to me, and trying to find that balance. So it was an immediate that I continue to use today, but as Rita pointed out, it's not just with work, because I do a lot of negotiations at work, but it's at home, it's every aspect of your life. So I think that was probably, and at the end of the day, you know, back to the ROI, we really are products for, you know, our own company, and if they've invested in you, or whether it's salary, whether it's the tuition, it really does, you wanted to do your best for the course just to make sure that you were paying that back to your family, I mean, and to the company.
And I will add to that, my experience, especially as I go to alumni events and see some of the personalized work that students have done through our program for their companies or their own businesses, and they come back and they tell me how they have put those strategic analyses into place and how that has benefited their organization and their own careers. It's very enheartening to see that, and I see it on a regular basis. So I thank you all very much for answering these questions. I'm sure that our audience has some questions for you. So if you have questions, audience, then send them via chat. Kevin can ask any of those questions to the panelists at this stage.
So yes, please send in your questions before, as we wait for those to come in. Want to pose a quick question to panel. We talked about time, but then another big issue is money or investment. We just talked about your return on investment, but as taking yourself back as a prospective student, how would you, what advice would you give on evaluating the investment or the cost of the program? Anyone can start.
So for me, I think it's really that I was fortunate enough to work for a company that actually paid the tuition, but I will tell you that made me work probably even harder, because I wanted to make sure that I, you know, came back to them with the right grades and with the right effort and right, you know, getting the top talent. But I will tell you, as I was evaluating that, even if I had been paying for some of it on my own too, it's more than just a monetary commitment. It's a time commitment, and you just have to have that balance with your family, most importantly, I think, and then your employer. But you know, as both Bob and Kim and the others have said, the payback is forever. And I waited a long time to go back to get my master's and get my MBA, but I wish I would have done it earlier. But it's all kind of about the timing, and I think the payback just is forever.
Yeah, I would add to that too, is that there's always going to be something that comes up, or now might not be the right time, or, oh, after my kids are, in college, it'll be a right time to go. And I would just say that there's never a right time. I mean, if you have that passion, pursue it now, don't wait. There's going to be something, you're going to find a way to manage it. You all have interest in it. This is obviously something you're considering being part of it. So my best advice on that would be, you're going to find a way to make it happen. From the finance, I paid for it myself directly, and Suzanne's exactly right. It just continues to pay off. It was the best investment I could have ever made.
Yeah, it's an investment. I didn't have corporate support. I had, I think they covered overall less than 7%. But when I went in, I really wanted to make sure that I was doing the best that I could for myself so I could support my family and the companies I worked for. And the investment's more than worth it. I saw a comment from Mike on Rita's class alone. We had an absolute blast in that class, and it absolutely turns how you approach negotiations and outcomes totally around. And it was even that class, I still use the positions interest chart on my whiteboards, and it's a brilliant investment. I highly recommend it.
We can't hear you, Kevin.
Everyone for your responses. We have a question from Matt Donaldson. Besides Dr. Kozik's class, what was your most memorable class during the program? And I'll add to that, please share why.
Where to start? I think Smiler's entrepreneurship innovation class really makes you unpack I came from corporate America for almost 3 decades at the time, and it makes you unpack your thinking. Strategy, winding through the entire program, makes you stop and think about, am I considering this from Porter's? Am I looking at Mullins correctly? How are these coming together? And strategy was enjoyable. Supply chain, there's so much information. I'll say just, it's not crammed into a short amount of time, but there's a lot that you can just continue to learn. So I really loved all of them. I can't say there's another one other than strategy and probably leadership was another really good one close to negotiations, because it makes you think about how you motivate the organization in different ways than the traditional kind of management styles. So I got a lot out of leadership and strategy.
Thanks, Bob.
I'd agree with Bob. Those are some of my, it's hard to pick a favorite. It's like, which one's my favorite child? But they were all wonderful. I would say, probably on top of that is one of the courses is, of course, the International Study Abroad trip. And that was an incredible experience. I think just from the opportunity, our class went to Argentina, Chile, and Peru. And that was really my first international trip outside of Mexico or wherever. But just the experiences that you had with your classmates and with the professors to actually connect with businesses and overcome these perceptions that you may have of other countries, the experience itself is just so incredible, the takeaways that you have from that aspect. And I'll say, there are going to be classes that, aren't going to be your favorite. Particularly I had the journalism background and marketing background. So finance and accounting were especially challenging for me, but, did I learn a lot? You can bet you, I certainly did learn a lot. And I took a ton away from that and grateful on it. But I think that's really where you see the power of the teams come into play, because, while I may not have had the finance or accounting background, one of my teammates did, I could bring the marketing communications aspect to it. And so that balance just helps you, and you lean on each other to make it through, even when there's a more challenging class for you.
I would just add to what Kim said too, that don't be distracted if you don't have a finance or accounting background. There are a lot of finance and accounting courses in there, but to Kim's point, you always have an expert on your team. And while there's a healthy competition among everyone, there's no amount of competition that we aren't all trying to have everyone succeed and make sure everyone succeeds. So if you don't have that particular expertise in a particular area, then someone on your team will either give you that feedback or just work with you to make sure you have that. So, and then for me, I think the course was really strategy. I think starting at the beginning and hearing that I had to write a 25-page paper, and I probably hadn't written a 2-page paper in 20 years. So it was scary for me. And then when we got through it, and now Suzanne helped us walk through it and helped us, the blocking and tackling, it was a great, to Kim's point, it was a great experience from the beginning to the end. And starting it at the beginning helped because you kind of knew what the entire course was going to be, but they really package each semester with the right courses that help balance each other, and they all have that leadership component to it.